citizenship. Basically, it's how our relationship with food can change to make us happier, healthier, and better fed.
Yeah, so we're going to introduce some alternative ways of looking at food and our role in that process.
So Leslie and I kind of saw these pictures and the ideas they represent as all characteristic of a very specific way of thinking about food. And in this view, people are consumers of food, and that is our primary relationship with it. Food comes from a grocery store, and it comes from a transaction. And we see it as a very modern, a very urban, and a very capitalistic understanding of humans and their food.
Yeah, so people are receivers and consumers of food in a lot of ways, and this idea is characterized in a lot of ways by a lack of agency. We've really fallen to the mercy of our food, and we've relied on corporations a lot to provide us with it. So a lot of things we've talked about in this class kind of fall into this model. You know, food deserts, access to food, food stamps, and provisions such as these. And so it really puts the job of providing people with food on charities or government organizations to make that work. And we're not saying that that's a bad thing. These programs aren't negative, but it just is entrenched in a food culture that we think is not necessarily the best one. So, like, for example, subsistence farming has become very much obsolete. In the documentary King Corn, it points out the irony of the fact that farmers who produce corn, which is a main basis of a lot of our food sources, can't eat the things they're growing on their own land. So they, like, even the people that we trust to provide us with food have to participate in this culture of going to the grocery store and participating in this transaction to be able to feed their families and themselves. So we want to propose an alternative way of thinking about food, and not one to radically change the process that we have now, but more an idea of opening new spaces within this model for people that don't fit very well into it.
So in this new model, we don't want to think of people just as consumers. We want to regain some power in our relationship with food. And we can kind of call this state of like regaining your power with your food as food citizenship. Food citizens, if you want to have a definition, they're not just consumers, they're deep engaged in the community and have connection to food. By regaining this agency and this connection, you're no longer at the mercy of corporations or a system that you have no control over. In this view, growing your food becomes a political act against the dominant model.
Mm-hmm. So how do we do this? And we're all kind of familiar with the idea of urban farming and how it helps the community. So, you know, it provides local food, it cuts down on food travel and sustainable production, and it adds to sustainable production and all of these things. But we know all this. We know the ripple effect in which these modes help the community, but we less often look at the positive benefits of people who participate in this production and what it can do for them. So we think that these efforts of community gardening and urban farming can be particularly valuable in marginalized groups who don't really fit into or can't achieve success within the culture that we have now in our socioeconomic structure. So we want to discuss some groups in St. Louis that are using this new model to help people in our community who struggle within this dominant paradigm that we've discussed and helping them become food citizens. Such as like refugees, people with mental illnesses, people who just have gotten out of jail or the homeless, and not just people that we've talked about who live in food deserts and have a job but can't get to the grocery store, but people who have additional issues that prevent them from achieving success or really having agency in their food.
Something that really struck me in a source that we looked at to prepare was it was a Vietnamese farmer who had moved here, and he had very little control over his socioeconomic status. He couldn't get gainful employment, and he farmed because that was a way for him to regain power. So that was really important to me because last summer I worked at the International Institute's Global Farm in South City, St. Louis, and that's a refugee urban farm. We take farmers who, they were farmers in their home country, they moved to the United States, now they live in an urban setting. And so this is just helping them transfer their knowledge of farming to an urban setting. It's really important because these farmer refugees, they already know how to feed themselves. We just need to empower them to transfer that knowledge. It's also really important because refugees are a very vulnerable population when it comes to food security. There's a study that was done in London, a Western country, not the United States, but very similar. They looked at 30 different families to see if they were food secure. All 30 of them were food insecure. 60% of the children within those families were experiencing hunger. With the families that I worked at on the farm, they were able to take culturally appropriate food home to their families. They were also able to take that food to the markets and sell them and add back to the communities in which they are a part of. It's a very therapeutic process, and Leslie can speak more about that.
Yeah, so another really incredible program in St. Louis is the City Seeds Urban Farm. Excuse me while I grab this video. But it focuses less on creating farmers who can sustain themselves through urban agriculture and more on the therapeutic and job training side, using cultivation that's the word, as part of a whole. So I'm just going to play it a few seconds.
Our City Seeds Urban Farm is a model project that has gained national attention by growing food with the farm tended by homeless, near homeless, chronically mentally ill, and recently released prisoners who in turn, after their training...
Oh, sorry.
I'm in the Sharon Mark Club at St. Patrick's Center, and a lot of us are recovering addicts, and they said this was a good therapy program for us, so I decided to try it, and I love it.
And basically, with me, it gave me back my life. Because before Gate Green, I was kind of lost out there. You know, trapped on drugs and didn't see no way out. And I got approached by a friend of mine who had got clean and got their life together. And they told me about Go Green, and that's how I came about the program.
It's a nice program to join, you know, it gives you something to do, give you a chance to think. I've gained a new perspective in certain areas of my life. And I've come to appreciate it immensely.
So there's a lot more, but I just wanted to quickly throw that out there. Where am I going? So the gateway greeting rep at the beginning talked about this idea of job training. And so they teach people how to do things such as, you know, lay down patios and things that are accessible, but also how to grow certain plants and bushes that would be used in more of a landscape architecture setting. So it creates a lot more employable opportunities for everybody. We also showed some of the experience of clients at the City Seeds Urban Farm. And something that I didn't get to show were two people talking about their favorite vegetable that they like to grow. And one talks about the beet, how it's really versatile and really helpful because you can eat the greens but also the root. And a lot of this information is not very readily available. We've talked a lot in class about how educating people on healthy food and how to eat right is really important. But studies have shown that it's not only this knowledge and these skills that are very important about kind of getting your hands dirty. It creates increased self-esteem and a pride in what you're doing that transfers to other parts of your life. So through these modes, we're empowering food citizens to participate in our societies in new, more productive ways.
Yeah, so I want to make it really clear that when we're talking about getting involved into your the food system, that you don't have to go out and grow your food. Even knowing your farmer or being a part of a co-op or anything that sort of inserts yourself into the system that otherwise we're kind of just like empty mouths at the end of is going to be creating more just and empowering us in our food systems. When you become involved in the system providing your food, you're regaining your political power. It's such a new thing for us to be so divorced from where food comes from. It's a really new thing in America and human evolution, and we've all seen that from this class. I'm going to end with this idea that really struck me. It's a little bit hard to read right now, so I can sort of read it for you. But it's this idea that when we're talking about food security, we need to move to this greater idea of community food security. And that's a condition in which everybody has safe, culturally acceptable, and a nutritious diet, but it really focuses on you want to maximize social justice and community self-reliance within that system.